Here is my review and recap for Dexter Season 1, Episode 9, entitled Father Knows Best. In this episode, Doaks kills somebody in cold blood, and Dexter has massive daddy issues. Let's get this review started. All right, so there are really only two storylines that go throughout this episode. One has to do with Doaks and Batista, and the other has to do with Dexter's father. So let's talk about Doaks and Batista first. At the beginning of this episode, Doaks and Batista are driving in a car somewhere on some kind of an investigation when Batista's driving, and Doaks sees somebody off to the side of the road going over a bridge, and he demands that Batista stops the car, and he chases this individual. So the individual kind of runs down to the edge of the bridge, jumps over. So does Doaks, follows him. So Batista has to turn the car around and go back. As he's going down, he hears a couple of gunshots. First, he hears a really low gunshot and then a really loud gunshot. When he goes down there, he finds out that Doaks was underneath the overpass for the bridge, and about 50 feet in front of him was the guy that he was chasing dead. He was shot dead by Doaks. So Batista doesn't know what's going on. They bring in Dexter to do a blood spatter test, and they find out that the way the blood was going doesn't match what Doaks was telling them that happened. Doaks said he went down there, the guy shot at him, so he shot back. Well, the blood doesn't match that. Batista is also 100% certain he heard a .38 fire first, which is what the individual was holding, versus the 9mm that Doaks had. There's an IA investigation, and then later on you find out that LaGuerta goes to Doaks and has a discussion with him. And come to find out, this individual that he shot had come from, he's Haitian, and he was in the Haitian army. And Doaks used to be in special forces over there and saw the Haitians do some really, really horrible things to people. And it comes to light that he was an individual who had done some horrific crimes over there. And LaGuerta says she'll make sure that this goes away and that guy did not deserve to live. Basically, that what he got off actually scot-free compared to, well, I wouldn't say scot-free, but he got off easy compared to what he should have gotten for what he actually did. In the end, Batista gets really upset because IA drops the investigation, and he's wondering why, because you could see in the scenes where he was talking to IA that he was in bad shape. Like, he didn't want to have to do this, but he felt like it was his duty. And in the very last scene that had to do with this storyline, Batista is walking through the department, and one of his cops pushes him, because he sees him as a squealer. And Doaks actually stands up for him to basically letting Batista know he knows he did the right thing, and he just didn't have the whole story. So it was kind of an interesting story here to give a little bit of background to Doaks, but doesn't really have anything to do with the overall storyline with what's happening in the show. The other storyline we have here is Dexter's real father ends up dying. Now, Dexter never knew his father, didn't know he was still alive. I think, if I remember right, Dexter's adoptive father told him that his father was dead. Well, you go through this episode, and his father's dead, and he gets some stuff from a lawyer saying he needs to go and take care of the estate. So they go to his supposed father's house and notice that his life didn't really start until he was about 30 years old. So they're wondering what happened in the first 30 years of this individual's life. Now, Dexter is not convinced that this is his father. Now, before he goes into doing any investigating here, guess who shows up? Well, first of all, he goes to the house with his girlfriend, Rita. Then who shows up? His sister and her boyfriend, who was actually the ice truck killer. So they end up having a couples weekend at the house. They decide to spend the weekend there, take care of the house, do what they need to with the property. And Dexter's sister, Deborah, is there to help and kind of support him. Well, Dexter does some investigating and finds out that he is actually his father. He went and got a blood test done, sent it in to Masuka, and had Masuka check the DNA, not telling him what it was. And also finding out if there was a tox screen. And the only thing that came back with the tox screen was that he had been basically subdued. He had some kind of a tranquilizer, basically. Now, this kind of perks Dexter's imagination a little bit. Now, at the same time, Deborah gets upset when she gets the call from, she actually takes the call from Masuka and gets really upset that Dexter did this in the first place because she considers herself to be the real family. Well, Dexter wasn't, convinced it was his father, and it was. So at this stage, he thinks that maybe his father was murdered. So he wants to know. So he at one point had gone to the coroner's office to see the body, and he notices a tattoo on the arm that actually brings back some memories with him driving a car with his father. And the coroner tells him, he died of a heart attack for sure. And Dexter's, kind of asks him, "Are you sure? Are you sure that he was killed by a heart attack and not something else?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I see this stuff all the time." And he goes, "I know a heart attack when I see it." So Dexter wants to go back later after he finds out about the tox screen and the tranquilizer to find out if he had been murdered or if he really died. So he was going to do some examination. And he only finds out that there are ashes. They had already cremated him. So he only had the ashes. He had to take the box with him because he had already touched it, and the security guard in the coroner's office actually was coming out, so he got chased out. When he gets out to the road, the person who's meeting him there to help him actually is the ice truck killer. So he had left Deborah to follow him because he said he noticed Dexter leave and kind of knew what Dexter was going to do, so he said, "I decided to follow you." Before we get to the end of the episode, there's also a scene when Dexter is there and him and Rita show up before Deborah and the ice truck killer do. He has a conversation with an old elderly woman across the street. He has a conversation with her when he first gets there, and she wants him to clean the gutters. He says, "I'm not going to be here long enough to do that." When he finds out that he is related, he wants to find out if she noticed anything weird in the neighborhood in the past week right before he died. So he goes and talks to that elderly neighbor again. She tells him that she noticed a cable repairman had been over last week and that he didn't seem to know what he was doing. In fact, she had trouble and she talked to him and he couldn't help her. So Dexter asked, "What does he look like?" And she said, average height, weight, dark hair, that kind of a thing. So this kind of piques Dexter's interest as well. Well, at the end of the episode, after the ice truck killer goes and gets Dexter off the street after running from the coroner's office, they decide to go to the bowling alley because his father was really into bowling, and he decides to drop his ashes there at the bowling alley on the turf outside on the grass. Well, they get back, and as they're leaving and they're wrapping up the weekend, they're pulling out, and as Deborah and the ice truck killer leave first, and the old lady from across the street says, cable repairman. She's trying to get his attention. And he notices, but he ignores her and then drives off. Dexter and Rita get in their car, and as they're pulling out, she's calling out, saying, that's the repairman, and Dexter didn't hear her. And then he drives away. And in the very final scene of the episode, you see the ice truck killer going as a repairman back to the elderly woman's house to kill her. Basically, they don't show it, but he's there to put her down so she cannot cause any more troubles for the game that the ice truck killer is playing with Dexter. So this episode was very interesting. There was no kill for Dexter. This wasn't your typical episode. There were only the two storylines that were kind of being balanced in this episode. Not entirely engaging, but also not entirely boring either. We're finding a little bit more out about what's kind of happening with the ice truck killer and Dexter here. So what we do know, and Dexter, there was a scene where when Dexter got back after dumping the ashes, that he was there with, he goes in to sleep with Rita in the bedroom, and Rita tells him there's a box of stuff over there that you kind of want to look at. And he goes over there and actually finds a card that he actually wrote, because there's one scene in this episode where Dexter has a cut on his side. He's getting very close to Rita, and the kids come into the bathroom, and he'd just gotten out of the shower, and they see this cut on his side. Well, you find out later in the episode that when he was a kid, he got cut really bad on kind of a fence, and it ripped open his side, and he was going to die if he didn't get blood. So you find out he had a very rare blood type. So they go back, and his father actually gets the blood from Dexter's real father. And as Dexter's going, he actually wrote a card to the person who donated the blood and Dexter's adoptive father didn't tell him who didn't tell him it was his real father. And so Dexter wrote a card to him, and his adoptive father said, I'll get this to the guy who gave you the blood. Well, when he got back, in the stuff that Rita had found, that card that Dexter had written to him was there. And so there was no question about this. This was Dexter's father. So Dexter is now under the impression that somebody has murdered his father. And so we've got 3 episodes left of this season. We're going to see where this goes. Things are going to get very interesting in the next 3 episodes. So please hit that subscribe button. And on the screen, you're going to see the last 2 reviews that I did. You can click either one of those to watch the previous reviews. And check out my page. I do lots of reviews on many different things, and I do appreciate everybody who has shown up so far, subscribed, and is supporting the channel. I do appreciate it. There's going to be a lot more. There are going to be many more reviews that are going to be coming down the line. So you don't want to miss any of those. So hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and you will be alerted as new things go up.